Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Shri Vallabhadhisha ki Jai, Jai Shri Krishna. Today is the 8th day of reading. We are in Varta 3, Shri Damodar Das Ji Sambhalware, and part 2 in his Varta. Jai Shri Radhe. One day in the very hot season, Damodar Das put his Sri Thakurji to bed and then went up to sleep in the open on the roof. Sri Dwarkanathji requested the maid to open the door to the temple room because he was feeling so hot. She opened the door and then he requested her to fan him, which she did. After a while he let her go back to sleep and she left the door of the temple room open. When Damodar Das Sambhalware saw that the door was open, when he went there in the morning, he asked who had opened the door. The maid recounted how the Lord had asked her to do so. Damodar Das was puzzled as to why the Lord had not asked him to open the door, but reasoned that it was the Lord's wish to bless the maid in this way, and that in Sri Acharyaji's path of grace all are equal. The rules of high or lowly status no longer apply, for the Lord only requires love from his devotees. Later on, the Lord personally informed Damodar Das Sambhalware that he had told the maid to open the door and that he had no right or reason to be annoyed about that. Apart from that, he said, "You go up to the open air on the roof to sleep, but you keep me locked in this room." Damodar Das immediately took a vow not to eat until he had completed a much better Seva arrangement for his Sri Thakurji. His wife asked him why he took such a vow, because the work would take quite a long time to finish. He agreed to fast from grains, but to only eat some fruits until that time. He upheld this vow until the changes had been completed. He moved his Lord Seva into the new place on an auspicious day, and celebrated by making nice offerings and inviting Vaishnavas to take prasad. Only then did he break his fast. Bhav Prakash. Light on the inner meaning of this Varta. The Lord blessed the maid with the service of fanning him, not Damodar Das Sambhalware's wife. This is because she had, because of her father's opinion, given up the fetching of water seva just like that, not even being concerned about this in her heart. Therefore he chose the maid to open the door and to fan him. Here we find Sri Acharyaji's instructions that one must nurture full love for the Lord in the heart and do for him in exactly the same way as one would for their own comfort, as, for example, in the consideration of how to serve appropriately for the seasons. Damodar Das Sambhalware slept on the roof, but there was no way for cool air to come into the temple room. The Lord called the maid to open the door and thereby established the correct ways for the Lord's personal quarters. The maid had the Lord's service firmly established in her heart, and she always considered his comfort 24 hours a day. She was thinking of the Lord. She had reached the perfection of heartfelt service but never exposed this publicly. Therefore, the Lord was most pleased with her. Damodar Das Ji Sambhalware had been angry with the maid about her opening the door at first. The Lord was annoyed that he was treating someone so dear to him quite inconsiderately. However, he did not want Damodar Das Sambhalware either to be guilty of the offence of anger, so he said that it was his personal request to the maid to open the door, and that Damodar Das Sambhalware should be kind to her, not angry, recognizing her true spiritual form. He told Damodar Das Sambhalware off for shutting him in an airless room while he slept in the open on the roof, whilst failing to remember his true original identity as the Sakhi named Chitra, who was in charge of the temple room arrangements. Damodar Das Sambhalware subsequently realized his identity and his relationship to the Lord. In the mood of Chitra Sakhiji, he swore to eat only after making the necessary changes to the room. He called the workman, but then his wife objected, saying it might take a long time to complete the work, and how would he manage on a full fast? He agreed to have some fruit. The construction of a suitable place went on, and was completed, including carvings, windows, the main seat for Sri Thakurji to be enthroned, the veranda, the courtyard, small and large curtains for dividing and concealing, etc., just as in Sri Thakurji's original home in Vraja. In fact, it was made according to those ancient concepts and designs. He chose an auspicious time to present it and celebrated the occasion by feeding all the Vaishnavas and making offerings to Sri Acharyaji. Varta Prasang 3, Part 3. One day, after the Rajbhog lunch period, Damodar Das Sambhalware went into Sri Thakurji's sleeping chamber to tidy up the bed, etc., and there noticed that a cat had been there and messed the floor. Damodar Dasji said, "Thakurji can't even look after his own bedroom." Sri Dwarkanathji then threw a tray down onto his head and hit him with a stick. "Are you the servant or am I?" he asked. "Should a servant speak in this way?" He was very upset. Damodar Das tried to pacify him with nice food offerings, and Sri Thakurji accepted them, but, however, he did not speak to Damodar Das Sambhalware for over 2 months, and it was only after a lot of imploring that he even began to speak to him again. Bhav Prakash. Sri Thakurji partook of the food offerings after he had to hit Damodar Das Sambhalware with the stick. Sri Acharyaji had given Damodar Das the right to serve him in the mood of a servant, but not in the mood of one of his friends, such as when he laughed at Sri Thakurji. He had gone beyond the right to serve, and that Sri Acharyaji had granted him. A Vaishnava should always understand the difference between these service moods and modes, and behave accordingly. Part 4. One day, Damodar Das Harsani came as a guest to Damodar Das Sambhalware's home and stayed there for about a week. Damodar Das Sambhalware looked after his every need until he left to go to Adel. Sri Acharyaji then asked him where he had been staying and where he had been taking prasad. He told him about his stay with Damodar Das Sambhalware, mentioning that he had not partaken of grains cooked in water. Sakari. Sri Acharyaji became displeased with Damodar Das Sambhalware, saying that he should have offered Sakari prasad to him. Damodar Das Sambhalware got ruse of this, and telling his wife to take very good care of Sri Thakurji's service, decided to go to Adel too. Reaching there, he met Sri Acharyaji and bowed down to him, but Sri Acharyaji turned his back on him. Very upset by this, Damodar Das Sambhalware asked him how he had offended him, with the plea that embodied souls are prone to making mistakes and that it is always good to learn about such offences. Sri Acharyaji then asked him why he had fed Damodar Das Harsani with Sakari prasad, but not with Sakari. Damodar Das Sambhalware asked Sri Acharyaji to ask Damodar Das Harsani the reason for this. Sri Acharyaji did so, and Damodar Das replied that he had taken the morning prasad from the Balbhog Seva and therefore was not hungry when it was time for the Sakari prasad at lunchtime. Sri Acharyaji said, "You purposely did not partake. I am very displeased about this. The Lord always brings about such situations in order to expose the state of the devotee's heart." Damodar Das Sambhalware was at home in Kanauj, but he knew what was going on in Sri Acharyaji's heart. And Sri Acharyaji is always situated inside his devotees' hearts, so why would the devotee not know his heart too? However, the Lord often tests love in devotees' hearts through creating various situations. Sri Acharyaji was very kind to Damodar Das Sambhalware and then sent him home to Kanauj, where he and his wife continued to serve their Lord very nicely. Bhav Prakash, light on the inner meaning of this story. It was really just to grace him that Damodar Das Harsani went to Damodar Das Sambhalware's home to take prasad. Damodar Das Sambhalware had an opulent service arrangement and used body and wealth generously therein. He used to invite all and any Vaishnava who passed through to take prasad, and then if they were going onwards to meet Sri Acharyaji, he would send all sorts of offerings to Sri Acharyaji through their hands. He was very generous to those Vaishnavas as well. He would secretly put money for their expenses into their travelling bags. They were always singing his praises to Sri Acharyaji, but Sri Acharyaji wanted to make sure that his heart and consciousness were entirely pure too, and that there was no hint of his misplaced loyalty. Knowing all of this, Damodar Das Harsani came to his home to take prasad. Really, it was only to grace him. He saw that Damodar Das Sambhalware's heart was completely pure, but because of his wife's adherence to her father's rule, rather than to the graceful path, he did not honour the prasad of grains cooked in water at their house. He stayed there for 5 days, but did not reveal any of the inner secrets of devotion to him. When he came back to Sri Acharyaji, he told him where he had been, but that he had not eaten the sakari prasad there. He had, however, honoured the prasad of grains cooked in ghee, anasakari. This indicated that he trusted the heart of Damodar Das Sambhalware, but not that of his wife. Sri Acharyaji was perturbed that even though Damodar Das Sambhalware had the chance during Damodar Das Harsani's visit, he had still not set his wife upon the proper path through this great devotee's auspices, and that this type of opportunity would not always arise. Damodar Das Sambhalware was able to perceive this in his Guru's heart, but his wife did not have that perception. Part 5. When Vaishnavas from Simhanand went to Sri Acharyaji, they always passed through Kanauj and stayed with Damodar Das Sambhalware. He fed them all. He also gave them all a coin and a coconut to take to Sri Acharyaji, so that none of them went there empty-handed when they conveyed his respects. This was the kind of great Vaishnava that Damodar Das Sambhalware was. This is where we will take rest now from the Varta, and tomorrow will be the 9th day, Damodar Das Sambhalware, Varta number 3 and part 6. Jai Shri Vallabhadisha ki, Chaurasi Vaishnava ki Jai, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.